Good morning, parents, teachers. It's Miss Carol. I am here with a Sunday school idea again. And I just got to thinking that, if Sundays are too much video for your family with church and adult class, there's nothing saying that this has to be Sunday school. It could be Wednesday night school or whatever works for your family. But do try and pick a time sometime during the week to have Christian education with your children. You can use your own thing, you don't have to use mine, but it's important to keep them in the Word too while we're separated from each other during this time. So whether you're doing this on Sunday morning or Monday afternoon, whatever works for you, set aside a time to have some Sunday school. Our story this week is an Easter story, but it's a different Easter story, one that we don't do very often. So it really might be something new for your children. It's a revealing truth. It's downloaded below, so you have these pages to be the teacher and give you some ideas. The first thing we look at is the objective, and our objective for this week is that we want the children to say, I understand that God uses sacraments, baptism and Holy Communion, and His Word to create faith in me and keep my faith strong and help me to believe in Him. So that's your objective. It's the story of the disciples, what happened Easter Sunday afternoon. He rose from the dead. Mary found that in the morning. Then later that afternoon, some of the disciples, not the apostles, but two of Jesus's other followers, were walking on the road to Emmaus in the afternoon, going home, and they were so sad because they didn't understand why Jesus had to die. But then all of a sudden, Jesus was walking with them. They didn't recognize Him, but He was walking with them, and He explained things to them about why He had to die. And then it was revealed to them who it was, that it was Jesus. And they were excited to know, yes, He was alive. He had risen from the dead. So there are the narratives to tell that story for older and younger children. But before you get into telling the story, you might want to do some kind of launch activity. They suggest talking about a time that your child maybe found something difficult to learn in the beginning, but after they got the hang of it, it wasn't a problem. Maybe bike riding, or I thought of those pot holders that were weaving. So if you want to do weaving, just take a plain piece of paper, fold it in half like hamburger, and then on the folded side, cut little strips, not all the way up, leave an inch or so at the top, but cut up some strips, maybe ½ inch wide, and then when you open it up, you have a base for weaving. And you take another strip like this and go over, under, and keep going down the page like that, and then you put another one right here next to it. But if you went under, then you're going to have to go over with this one and alternate. And you end up with something that sort of looks like this, that they can use for a placemat or whatever, and talk about how, well, that was hard, the first and especially the second strip, because it has to go opposite, was hard. But by the time you got to the end of it, it was easy, you understood. Well, that's the way the disciples are in the story today. They didn't understand at first. It was hard for them to accept the fact that Jesus had died. But by the end of the story, after Jesus explained it to them, they understood and they rejoiced in the fact that He had done that for them. So you might do that kind of activity to get started. Then either from Scripture or from one of the narratives, tell the story. Then there's some questions to answer in the Learn section of your teacher's guide. And I just wanted to comment on one. It says, even though we don't see Jesus in person now like the disciples did, what are some ways that we do see Jesus in our world? Well, we see him in all the things that he has created, the Father has created. Sometimes we think of God sightings as times when there was a near miss, like, oh my goodness, that car almost hit us. God was protecting us. Yeah, that's okay, that's true too. But sometimes we don't think about how we see God, is that we see God in people that are in need, people that need help. Because he says, if you do something for the least of my brothers, you do it for me. So when we're helping someone else, that's when we can know that we're helping Jesus and we see him and experience him in our life as well. So answer the questions, and then comes the Live page, and there's all kinds of suggestions. One down here is to take little pieces of paper and write a message on them like Jesus is alive, and then tape them on your neighbor's door. And that reminded me, I don't know if these rocks have made it around to your neighborhood or not, but they're in our neighborhood. And you just paint them and then leave them in a public place for people to find. Is that right? Is that up? Oops, no. So that might be an idea to make the learning real for students, that sometimes we want to share after we realize the fact that Jesus is alive and he did that for us. We want to share that with people as well. Another thing is that in the story, the disciples weren't blind, but yet they didn't recognize Jesus. They didn't know who he was. So anything with a blindfold works to make the story real for your learners. And you could blindfold them and lead them around, and like, you're not blind, but you can't see right now. That's the way it was with the disciples. They weren't blind, but they couldn't understand. They couldn't understand until Jesus explained that he loved them. That's why he died. That was his Father's plan, to rescue them from their sin. And it was his plan for us too, for you and for your children. So remember that he walks with us as well, and he never stops loving us, because nothing can take his love away. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Have a good week in the Lord. Take care. Bye-bye.